Okay, welcome back everybody, and if you're tuning in to this for the first time, be sure to check out the previous video in the series showing you guys how to set up for this little flight. As an example, we're flying a ferry, an equipment change from Gatwick to Manchester in this Boeing 787-10 Dreamliner using the heavy mod. In the last video we went through everything in detail, at least as it stands so far in relation to how the mod works, and we're ready for push and start. So beacon needs to go on, and we of course need to make sure all our fuel pumps are on as well. We've got our APU fired up and started too, and you can see here that we've got our APU at 100%. So that's all on and working as expected. So with that in mind, all we've got to do is push and start. Work out which direction you're going to face. So in this instance we're going to want to push and start, and we want the tail to go towards the left, and now we want our nose towards the bridge there as well. So bear that in mind before you start to move.
Cockpit to ground.
Go ahead, flight deck.
We are ready for pushback and engine start.
Roger. Release the parking brakes, please.
Parking brake released.
Parking brakes released.
Pushing back.
So, tug's lining up. Beacon's on. And let's start the engines. Onto the overhead panel then. You've got two switches at the top here. We've got starters. So let's go left engine start, and you'll have to excuse the fact that I can't remember what order they're supposed to go in the Boeing, so it's one or the other. I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. And you can see now the N2 is rising on the ICAS just there. As it gets to about 20, hit fuel control to
You're
run.
cleared behind and you can start your engines at your discretion.
And engine 1 will start. In the meantime, we control the tug, and we try to push back as best as we can. Bear in mind that this is a very long aeroplane, and it's got quite a wide turning circle. There we go. So whilst we're lining up, let's go back to the overhead. You can see now that left start has flicked to norm, and let's start engine number 2. Just watch that as we line up. Neutralise the tug, so centralise the tug, and we'll stop pushback there.
Pushback complete. Set parking brakes, please.
Parking brakes set.
Roger. Okay, the tow bar is disconnected.
That N2's got to about 20, so let's start.
The pin.
Thanks, and you
Fuel
can
flow.
disconnect and go to hand signals.
We've got the
Have a good flight. See you
LatinVFR
later.
AREX scenery as well, the ground equipment, which is why we've got all these extra ground vehicles moving about in Microsoft Flight Simulator that aren't in the default. And you can see engine 2 starting here. So that's all good. We can check our rudder controls and things, our flight controls, using the ICAS status page for the flight controls. You can see they're all moving there. Happy days, all full and free, and rudder trims on 0.0. And stab trim, I'm going to bring that to 8.5. In the overhead then, right engine has gone back to norm. Fuel pumps are all on, and we could probably now go ahead and switch the APU off. Let's turn the lights on there for taxiing, and naturally we would get our taxi clearance. We've selected flaps 5 for departure, so let's go ahead and get those moving, and let's apply a bit of power to start the roll. Now this does not handle particularly well on the ground, so you've got to bear that in mind. If you go too fast or too slow for the power setting and for the turn, you'll end up going in a straight line. He's whizzing off out the way. Check the charts as well, study those. You want to make sure that you are taxiing on a taxiway or apron that can actually deal with the size of aeroplane that you're trying to manoeuvre. So there'll be approved routes for things like the A380 or Boeing 747-8, and the same with this as well. If you guys want to get your hands on this scenery, I'm sure lots of people know about it already, of course. We've covered it a lot on the channel. Head to flightsim.to and just search Gatwick, and you want the full ultra custom Gatwick airport that he's created. So, slowing down ever so slightly for the turn, onto Romeo. And bear in mind, you want to turn for the centre of the undercarriage to line up with the taxiway. So your nose wheel will overshoot, as I'm showing you guys here. It's just things to bear in mind as you're taxiing along. One's waiting patiently, the other's got a death wish. No, they've both got a death wish. He's zipped out the way nice and sharp. So on to Juliet then. Routinely I'd be connected to the VATSIM network, of course, not for today. And turning, this is a really sharp turn. And you can see in this instance, it's not wanting to turn. That's just one of those really annoying things with the Dreamliner. So use a bit of differential braking. I'm holding the right brake, and I'm using power to try and force the turn. There's another little tip here. The ground controllers will be wondering what on earth you're doing. But it stops you overshooting the runway, especially if you're trying to line up with a runway, because that's the worst time that this sort of thing could happen. Unfortunately, it handles like a dog on the ground, so it handles more like a submarine, I guess. And there we go. Now ease off the differential brakes. So down we go to the runway, and we're going to line up on 08 right, which is down the far end of the airport, and then we're going to go and depart that Lambourne 1 Zulu departure. Almost at the threshold then, we're going to head back into the flight deck and complete our pre-departure checks. They're going to be quite basic because of course we're still getting loads of things enabled with this mod. So, auto brake rejected takeoff, spoilers armed, everything else is ready to go because we don't currently have any other functionality yet. So another sharp turn. I've got full left rudder here and it's actually deciding it wants to work, although not quite as much as I want, so I'm actually holding the left brake now. For a bit of differential braking. Hopefully over time the developers managed to overlay this with a replacement file just so it handles a bit better for us. It's like taxiing a Cessna with differential brakes on the ground. So on the VATSIM network then we'll be cleared to line up on runway 08 right. Strobes go on. And then when we're cleared for departure as well, which we're going to be anyway, landing lights go on as well. Remember to think about lining up the main carriage, that's the central body of the gear, rather than the nose wheel, so you overshoot slightly and then you're turning in to line up the rest of the aircraft. Like so. So lined up with the runway, make sure that our heading is selected, so 080, apply a little bit of power, apply a little bit of power, 40% N1 to start rolling, and apply takeoff thrust. 80 knots, blasted past that. Wait for V1. V1. Rotate. Positive rate. Gear up. So after departure, autopilot on, LNAV. Let's bring that vertical speed down. And we can bring that throttle back as well. There we go, blasting through 2,000 feet already. watching it turn. Heading. It's a Boeing thing, make sure it's in line. And obviously we can disarm the speed brake as well now. We've cleared the flaps and everything up as well. And we're flying away within the speed constraint of 250 knots, and we're coming up to 6,000 now. ATC gives us a continued climb to flight level 240, which is our cruise for today. And back up we go. Little tweak on the vertical speed there just to wake it up. And we're watching the nav display the whole time to make sure that everything's working as it should. At this point, London airspace is busy, for example on VATSIM, and ATC want to give us a direct to Welling. So, go into legs, find Welling, there it is, or even Lambourne we could do, but we'll do Welling for the purpose of this example. Click it. So it goes into the scratch pad. Go back to the original page, so page 1 of the legs routes tab, and then add Welling to the top left. Execute goes green, and we execute the flight plan change. And now we're watching the aeroplane go direct to Welling. And there we go, turning away. Recycle the heading bug with it. Passing 10,000, let's start to accelerate. And we'll do 315 I think today. We're nice and quick in this big jet. Taxi lights off and landing lights off. We could ping that off as well. So, the next thing to discuss then, we're going to cover throughout this very short flight how to fly a hold using the 787 Heavy Division mod. I'm going to show you guys exactly how to do that, and we're going to discuss inputting in arrival routes, flying the ILS procedure, that sort of thing. So loads to cover in this next episode that we're doing at the moment, and I hope you guys are enjoying it. Make sure you click subscribe down below if you've found it useful, helpful, and you're new to the channel of course. And don't forget to give us a like as well. So there we go, wings level back on the flight plan route with the direct to Welling that we've been given. Let's take a look at Navigraph then. So looking at the stars, we want the Dane 2 Alpha arrival into Manchester, and you can see it would go, it'd be Welling via Elvos, Leicester, and then we'll be tracking the Trent VOR. Currently I can't do that in this testing version, but it will be a feature enabled very soon after recording. But I'll still talk about the process. We're putting the Trent VOR of 115.7 into VOR 1, or VOR left as it is here, and the Manchester VOR MCT of 113.55 into the other VOR option. You can put it in the left or the right, whichever you choose. We're also going to enter and fly a hold at Dane, so I'm going to show you guys exactly how to do that as well. Hopefully you find that useful. And then we're going to fly the ILS approach. You can see here it says that we have to be at flight level 200 by Elvos if we're on the Tango 420 airway, or flight level 200, 25 nautical miles before Trent if we're on the November 57 or the Quebec 4 airway. We're on the Tango 420, so for us that means we have to be flight level 200 by Elvos, and then flight level 80 by Dane. So there's Dane. We're going to fly a little bit of a hold there, and then we're going to set up for the ILS runway 23 right at Manchester Airport. And we're going to make sure the ILS frequency of 1095 has gone in automatically. We're going to set the minimums and all that sort of stuff as well, so stay tuned for that. So just as we pass over London, you can see Welling is coming up in around about 60 nautical miles, 55 nautical miles, and we've got our top of descent marker there too. You can see the banana here, which is our vertical navigation guidance telling us when we're going to reach our top of climb, which is our cruise altitude of flight level 240. Don't forget as well, guys, standard pressure over 10,000 feet. I'm too busy chatting and I've missed that little bit there. And there we go. If you want to, a little tip here, if you want to limit the rate of turn in the Dreamliner, turn this inner collar here. You can put it on auto. I'm probably going to leave it on auto now, but you can turn it all the way to the very far right hand side, which is a 30-degree bank angle limit. All good. So we punch in the METAR at Manchester and we're getting winds variable at 2 knots, QNH 1020 and 14 degrees. The preferential runway when the weather's like that is 23 right. So departure, arrival, EGCC, and we want the ILS for the runway 23 right. Next page, and there's the Dane to Alpha arrival. Transition via MCT because that's the only thing that we can do at the moment, and we hit exec. Ignore that little Elvos waypoint, not quite sure where that's come from at the scratch pad. So there we go. If we expand the range here slightly, you can see our arrival waypoints factored in here too. Now we want to put in a hold at Dane. So really busy event, for example, let's say we're flying into midweek madness or Manchester madness on VATSIM, and holds are pretty much guaranteed on those events. Well, all we need to do is click hold. We're going to put a hold in at Dane, so we can click next page. There's a couple of discontinuities here, so before we go any further, go to legs, and we need to clear these and deal with these discontinuities. That's important. So if you delete the discontinuity, check to make sure that you haven't lost any other bits of your flight plan. Briefly there we lost our star, so I've just quickly entered it back in again, but let's go back to the hold page, and on the next page we want Dane. That's where we want to fly the hold, so we select it, it goes into the scratch pad as you can see here, and then you enter it this button here where you've got the squares. Hold at Dane. Now on your nav display you can see this blue and magenta barber pole, and you can see that the leg time there is 1 minute. Now actually I want this to be a bit smaller, so let's do half a minute, and you can see here the shape and size of that is going to change. There we go, so we've just shrunk that hold down loads. So really useful, handy little tip there, changing the holds. If you were looking at that and it didn't look like the published charts, in this case it does, as you can see here. Enter via Dane, and then we fly a right hand circuit, if you like, a right hand orbit in the hold at Dane instead. But say for example it put it in at a 90-degree angle to that, then what we would have to do is go into the aircraft settings here and change the inbound course if we were flying in from a different inbound course, or we would add in the radial here, this quad, so that would then change the direction of the hold itself, and you'll find that you'll be able to pretty much make the hold turn to whatever angle you guys want it to look like. So have a good play with that, and it'll all make sense then. it won't be committed until we hit execute, and there we go. We get our top of descent marker back, and that blue and magenta barber pole hold has now gone solid magenta, so we're entering that, and that is now going to be committed, and we're going to then enter and fly that hold whilst we're descending down to the relevant altitude to make our approach. Because we've already selected our arrival procedure as well, we should have an ILS frequency. So in the RadNav page, we've got the ILS of 23 right, 1095. That's perfect. And we would ordinarily put in the VOR frequency, so 115.7 for Trent. I'm going to put that in VOR right. And then the main one at Manchester, 113.55 into VOR left. There's a bug with this at the moment, it doesn't actually like VORs, but that is getting worked on. Obviously I'm working with what I've got for the purpose of recording this. So if I go on and enter these, you can see that the VOR readings are incorrect. So I've shown you guys the process on how to get that programmed in. To then view them, you go to menu on your map, and then you select your VOR left and or your VOR right. Let's put the terrain map on as well, that's going to be important for approach to Manchester. 23 right, it's quite hilly, and we're going to be vectoring like ATC would make us do so. Init ref and approach page, and you can see here landing references Q and H, and we've got our VREFs here as well. So we're going to put in here flaps 30. And we've added in there flaps 30. That's it. So at flaps 30, you can see here, we can select that and put that into this section and hit execute. That's going to be our approach speed. If we were going to do a flaps 25 arrival, we could click in that section and we can enter it in there. So let's do flaps 25. The runway's certainly long enough. Okay, we're reaching top of descent now, so it was flight level 200 by Elvos, and we also want 8,000 by Dane. So let's target 8,000, vertical speed mode, and slowly bring that nose down with vertical speed. And we're going to enter the hold at Dane, and we're going to use that to our advantage to help us descend. Let's start to think about bringing our speed back. So let's do 240 and bring our range in as well so we can see what's going on. We'll do a 40 nautical mile range here. That looks pretty good. So monitoring this descent as we make our way down. Always check that your ILS frequencies are correct in your RadNav page. Sometimes it won't autofill, so don't rely on it autofilling and assume that it's going to be in there, because it might not. So just double check, make sure you got 1095 there. What you can also do is look down to this comm stack and click nav, and you can see here the ILS frequency of 1095 is in and the course of 231. And when we look at the charts, ILS DME 23 right, the course is actually 232. So 232, we can change that manually. There we go. but it's off. The alternate nav radio is off because we're not using this backup system. But again, it's something that you should really check. We've got our hold stuff ready to go as well there. And it's given us a max speed of 240 knots. That looks pretty good from what I can see here. Again, if we wanted to make it a bit longer and we wanted each leg to be slightly longer, then we could go in and dynamically change this. So we could increase the leg time back to 1 minute if we wanted to, and make that leg much longer. But pretty good, really cool feature actually for a massive airliner. The CLJ from Aerosoft has it, of course, and the working title, that has it very well actually, and the working title, CJ4 has had it for a long time too. The Dane hold is actually long but narrow. If we change this to 1 minute, and you can see there actually that looks a lot better now. That looks exactly like the charts. So, execute that. Oh, look at that, that's perfect. That looks absolutely bang on. If I show you guys the charts now, look at that. Hopefully you can see both on both screens. That looks pretty much exactly as it looks in the charts there, doesn't it? So, happy with that. And again, just before we enter the hold, we've gone in and dynamically changed that ourselves. So, passing 10,000, lights on, get the seatbelt signs on as well. And we're just descending down to the hold. So then, passing Trent, naturally that would be a VOR that we're tracking, but don't have the ability to do that in this at the moment. You guys will though, I should say, or hopefully will by the time this video goes live. So you would have your VORs there, you'd have a little indication on your nav display as well, showing you the direction to the VOR, etc. And at this point you'd be tracking both the Trent VOR and the MCT VOR, which is kind of where that star is from runway 23. So we're now going to be turning left and flying directly up to Manchester Airport basically. When we enter the hold, we're going to descend to 7,000 feet in the hold, and I'm going to show you guys what that's going to look like. And we're going to monitor the hold page as well. So make sure that our heading is in line. And our next task is going to be managing the hold, the aircraft flying within it. We've also got some other tasks, so we're going to be landing soon. Let's set auto brake. Let's set that to 2 today, I think. We need to remind ourselves that we're doing a flaps 25 landing, not a flaps 30. And when we exit the hold, we need to arm the speed brake as well so it deploys when we touch down. Let's change the range so we can see quite closely here how the aeroplane is going to fly the hold. And it was a max speed at the hold of 240. Let's bring that down to our flaps up clean speed. So I'm recording this, but I'm also testing the new features before they go into the development version for the Heavy Division team. So we've got to make sure that they work as expected, it all works as it should before it's more publicly released. And again, as a reminder, we would be tracking the MCT VOR and the Trent VOR still. So we would have the distances down the bottom of the nav display where you'd see VOR left and right down there. But of course that's not working for me at the moment. We stay in LNAV. The LNAV is going to fly the hold for us within the autopilot system. And it should be a 1 minute leg when our wings roll level at each point. Manchester's directly ahead of us, just underneath the cloud there. In fact, you can just see it actually. So just underneath the cloud where the cursor is, there's Manchester Airport. And ATC wants us to descend to 7,000, so we're giving the aeroplane lots of things to think about at the moment, and we'll just do a 600 foot per minute rate of descent. And any second we should be turning the first turn at the hold. I'm watching it on the second nav display there to see how instant it is, and there we go. We're now flying into the hold at Dane, automated in the Microsoft Flight Simulator Boeing 787-10, thanks to the work of Heavy Div, the mod. And this is using the systems implemented by Working Title a little while ago now, so they've managed to get it working with Boeing 787-10, and that's absolutely fantastic. And as you can see, we're flying the hold at the moment. So it's flown ever so slightly out, and we've got 15-degree rate of turn here, so what we could do, whack that collar right up to 30 degrees, and that's going to allow the aeroplane to turn more steeply, and that's probably going to be important to allow it to fly the hold as we would expect it to. You'll be able to fly it a bit tighter then. So that's my own fault there. Before you enter the hold, make sure you've turned that collar all the way around to your max bank limit, which is 30 degrees. And we're now flying that first leg. And you can see, because we've entered the hold, similar to the Aerosoft CRJ, we've now got a exit hold icon here, and we can come out of the hold at any moment by clicking that. So let's say ATC now want us to descend to 6,000. We'll do 600 foot per minute. What the aeroplane's doing here is working to get itself back onto the flight plan line a bit more neatly. So I'm just letting it do its thing, monitoring it the whole way through to make sure that it doesn't do anything too wild. There we go. A little bit wavy on the line, but in the main we're flying the hold quite nicely. So as we're in the next turn, I'm going to exit the hold, and then we're going to continue to the next stage of the tutorial. I hope you guys have found this really useful. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Be sure to click that subscribe button as well if you've not done so already. Check the links in the description if you guys want to get hold of the Heavy Division 787-10 mod and enjoy things like the holds, the automated holds, and the improved flight plan manager within the 787-10 for MSFS. Absolutely fantastic work. I'm sure all of you guys agree. Join me for the next episode where we're going to fly out of the hold and then establish ourselves for the ILS approach into Manchester Airport. But in the meantime, as always, thank you for watching.